Sights and Sounds was created with three owners: Eddie Antar, his father, Sam Antar, and his first cousin Ronnie Gindy. The store struggled to make business in the early years due to fair trade laws. Eddie Antar then later bought a major part of his cousin's share and helped with most of the business, purchasing products overseas and then charging customers less than market price. Eddie switched their business name from Sights and Sounds to Crazy Eddie's after rumors went around that people were buying cheap technology from a guy people called Crazy Eddie. Business was going pretty well as they were able to outbeat competition with their outrageous prices. Studies have shown that when Crazy Eddie started engaging in advertising, they were as big as Coca-Cola.
Crazy Eddie's greatest TV and video sale ever. Get a video recorder, color TV, large screen TV, video camera, even an audio video component system. Get it all on sale now during Crazy Eddie's greatest TV and video sale ever. Remember, we are not undersold. We will not be undersold. We cannot be undersold, and we mean it. So get anything and everything in TV and video. Get it now during Crazy Eddie's greatest TV and video sale ever. Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane.
Between 1973 and 1979, Crazy Eddies began their descent into fraud. They skimmed cash from the till and underreported their income. Sales taxes were ignored or pocketed and never reported. Family members were employed and paid with cash under the table to avoid payroll taxes. Whenever a new Crazy Eddie store came to be, a family member was always the new manager in order to keep the fraud going. Inventory fraud was absolutely rampant, from fake fires and flood ruining their inventory to fixing a number so that it looked like there was more inventory than there really was. He'd also buy used or damaged merchandise and sell it as new, if not try to return it and claim he never knew the damage was there. So why weren't they caught? Before going public, there were still 11 years in which Crazy Eddies could have been found out. In order to maintain their level of fraud, they were friendly to auditors and distracted them by any means necessary. They would have pretty employees be at the beck and call of the auditor in order to flirt and distract them. They would have employees who were overly helpful that would count the inventory for the auditor and make up the numbers that they needed. They would also have employees who just couldn't find the paperwork the auditors needed until it was too late for the auditor to carefully look it over. Auditors would be forced to rush through their paperwork and submit exactly what Eddie Antar wanted them to. When an auditor didn't fall for their tricks, they were reported to their firm for whatever reason Eddie could make up, so that way he wouldn't have to deal with that auditor again. In order to continue his rise to stardom, Crazy Eddie Antar had a Crazy Eddie idea and sent his younger cousin Sam Antar to college in order to become a CPA. Being sent to college completely free bought a lot of loyalty, according to Sam. Sam Antar then became Crazy Eddie's CPA and later on CFO. He found a job with the auditing firm focused on Crazy Eddies and learned to work the system from the inside. He would tell Crazy Eddie about changing rules and regulations and exactly how to outwit them, and he would make sure that inexperienced and unsure auditors would be the ones sent over to Crazy Eddie's come auditing time. By 1980, Crazy Eddie did not have enough. He wanted to go public. So he gradually reduced the skimming of the tills in order to increase the profit on paper. His 13 stores always had a growth increase every year, and they became amazingly successful on the auditor's reports. The steady increase of profit and growth caused Crazy Eddie to become public in 1984. They sold 1.7 million shares at $8 a share to investors. By 1987, he had opened 26 new stores.
So in 1984 and 1986, there were many different fraud techniques that were used to increase the profit growth. Sam Antar was sent to school to become a licensed CPA in order to avoid getting caught during audits. This basically allowed Crazy Eddies to work the auditors to their advantage. Because Sam knew of the long, tedious 8-week process auditors had to go through during an audit, he came up with a plan to distract them. The auditors wanted to be done 75% by the 6th week. However, Sam made sure that they were only 25% done by having female employees flirt with the young auditors and taking them out every night, while Sam took the auditors' managers out to pickup bars. The plan worked and the auditors ended up falling behind. However, through this, the auditors even started building a trust bond with Crazy Eddie and believed everything they said, despite it all being fraud. During this time period, they also engaged in what is known as the Panama Pump, which basically is using the money that they stole from the early years through skimming and tax evasion and pumping all this money back into Crazy Eddie's gradually to make it seem that they were extremely profitable. By the end of the 1986 fiscal year, their store sales increased by approximately 20% due to the Panama Pump fraud technique. So in 1987, this was when Crazy Eddie's started to fail due to increased competition. They experienced a decline in sales, and because they didn't want to be seen as not profitable, they were scrambling to find new ways to stay afloat. They resorted to inflating inventory, which basically as they got closer to the end of the year and they had to make their end of the year reports, they would inflate their inventory but not include the accounts payable, which falsely shows that they were still doing good because they didn't owe any money. However, it didn't work out as great as they planned. With tensions arising within the Antar family, it forced many family members to sell their stocks to pocket as much money as they could while they still can. There was also a rumor going around that with all these stocks being sold to investors, the investors were going to engage in a hostile takeover of Crazy Eddie's. This forced Eddie Antar to want to partner up with other suppliers and blame financial problems on them to cover up their fraud. However, Elias Zinn, another investor, unexpectedly offered to buy out Crazy Eddie's at $8 a share and succeeded in doing so. Once Zinn took over, one of the first things he did was a physical count of the inventory Crazy Eddie had. However, at the end of it all, he only came to find that everything was falsely reported. This ultimately ended up in starting investigations against Crazy Eddie's, and there were many lawsuits filed against the Antar family. So there were many class action lawsuits against Eddie and his entire family that was involved in the fraud. So about 6 years after Crazy Eddie was bought out by Elias Zinn, Eddie and his brother Mitchell were both convicted of criminal charges in 1993, but the conviction was appealed and dropped 2 years later. Through this whole process, there was about $150 million paid into civil litigations. So there were many stakeholders involved, but the three main ones would be Elias Zinn, investors, and consumers. Elias Zinn risked buying a business with high hopes that it used to be successful, and with a little bit of work, it can be successful again. However, he only ended up buying a fraudulent business. Investors would probably be the stakeholders that lost the most, because for every dollar that they put into the company, they were only able to get back 35 cents. And consumers, they were also stakeholders, because all the products that they were buying from Crazy Eddie's ended up only being in support of a fraudulent business and losing community trust within this company.
The procrastinators would not have made the decision to go public. We would have settled with the millions we were already getting from skimming the income that the business was generating. With proper maintenance, we could keep the profits going for a couple more years before retiring in the act of slipping away. Going public just increased scrutiny and opened Crazy Eddie's up for failure. Of course, there's the argument that the procrastinators would never have committed fraud to begin with. There's the risk of being caught, jail time, fines, and losing access to the industry that we've spent 4 years learning how to work in. Business isn't a great career to be blackmailed in, as even Burger King requires some level of financial responsibility and honesty. Crazy Eddie's was in a good position to become extremely profitable with the outlawing of fair trade. The company was headed in the right direction with becoming so huge in advertising that the brand Crazy Eddie's was comparable to the brand Coca-Cola. The Antar family was extremely smart to engage in this big of a fraud and learn to work the system as it did for over a decade. The company did make more money by becoming public, however, more risk also came with that decision. We do not believe that the reward of becoming a public company outweighed the risks that went along with it, but that is said with hindsight bias. Crazy Eddie's should have stuck with being a privately owned business and continued to only skim their profits.